I don't think most writers have a confidence problem. Too often we think, oh, if I were just more confident, then I'd know for certain this is what I was designed to do. If I could just get out of my head and get out of my thoughts. I think we have these beautiful little brains that are doing exactly what God designed them to do. And that's where I think faith comes in so powerfully. I love it because scripture doesn't tell us to believe every single thing we think. It tells us to renew our mind, to take our thoughts captive, and to think about what is true. And so I think neuroscience simply just helps explain how God designed us to do that.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Writers Bloc Podcast. Today, I am so excited to welcome Ashriel Huber. She is the founder of Called and Curious, host of a podcast by the same name, Called and Curious, and she's the author of Love Moves and the creator of Love Moves, which is a 6-minute inside-out makeover designed to help women reconnect with peace, beauty, and truth through gentle movement, guided reflection, nervous system informed practices, and faith rooted encouragement. I mean, we all need all those things. Through storytelling and neuroscience and embodied spiritual practices, Ashriel helps overwhelmed women experience life more beautifully and helps creatives move through fear and perfectionism and pressure without losing themselves in the process. Today, we're going to talk about why so many writers get stuck and how to keep creating anyway. So, welcome, Ashriel.
Oh, thank you so much. That was such a beautiful introduction. And just thank you, girls, for having me on here. This is such a privilege, such an opportunity. And I just hope we have a lot of fun today. And that at the end of it, you guys can walk away and go, that's why this happens. But this is what I can do when it happens. And that you just have that little boost of confidence to keep going and keep creating what God has called you to do in your writing life.
I love it. Well, it's so fun because, as I was doing your intro, I was like, wow, it sounds like she's going to talk to us about writer's block. Like
Yes.
all of those things are kind of synonymous with writer's block, which is something we talk about often. So, well, I gave a little intro about you, but what else would you like to tell us about your life? What things look like for you right now?
Well, I think maybe the biggest thing that I would want people to know is I don't think I ever set out, however many years ago to become the neuroscience girl for normal people on Tuesdays. But I think that's kind of what it became. Like we can just have honest conversations and start to understand our brains and our bodies better so we can start to live differently through the power of Christ. And for me, I actually just wanted to understand why I could love Jesus so much. And yet, well, life got overwhelming, or I was trying to write a book that everything still felt just so hard. I
Mm.
struggled with anxiety, people pleasing, overwhelm, and these old habits that I couldn't just pray my way out of. And I remember asking the Lord a question that changed everything. I was like, God, I know you can change me. I know that. But why does this feel so hard? And that question just sent me on quite the adventure.
Mm.
So it sent me on an adventure to write a really bad book about mermaids. I just want to make that very clear. Most of our first books, they're just practice. And that was definitely practice. Don't worry,
That's
she's got to get
great.
a rewrite someday. She deserves to be, resurrected, but practice. And then from there, I started the podcast, like you mentioned, called and Curious, because I wanted a space where I could actually practice what I was learning out loud. And then from there, I got certified in behavioral neuroscience because I wanted to better understand how God designed our brains to work. And then through all of that, he brought me to the book Love Moves. And I wrote it, sometimes selfishly we say for ourselves, but really I wanted to give women a very simple, practical way to move from their fear brain into their love brain and begin experiencing life differently from the inside out. Despite what our circumstances are, despite what our situations are that we're going through, that we can still live beautifully if we put our attention on God. And what I discovered, it just completely deepened my faith. So a lot of times people assume they're like, oh, neuroscience and faith, those are competing conversations. They don't belong in the same room. But I actually think they're companions. I think they're off like holding hands and skipping around because God designed our brains. And scripture tells us what? Tells us to renew our minds, right? And then neuroscience, it just gives us this glimpse into how incredible our creator designed that renewal to actually happen. So today, my heart is about helping women stop fighting themselves and start walking hand in hand with Jesus because transformation always begins with identity. It starts on the inside long before we ever see it on the outside. So we're not just trying to build a better life. We're not just trying to write a better book. We're becoming different people. We are going from glory to glory. And when who we are and how we see ourselves and experience ourselves begins to align with how we live, that's when we get to start to live beautifully. And I want that for women. I want them to experience their lives so much more beautifully.
Oh, that's awesome. I think it's exciting to talk about the whole topic of neuroscience, and we probably should talk about it more because like we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and all of this, mechanism going on up there is always like, we are embodied people. I was just reading in Philippians today, and Paul was talking about something and about, what you have heard and seen and received from me. Practice these things. And I was just seeing how, like, he was talking about the way what you've seen, what you've heard, what you've received. Like, it was all head, heart, hands. It was like whole body. Like, we are just whole bodied people. And anyway, I just think that was just such a neat, observation that it's like we are our whole self. And if we can learn a little bit more about how we are wired, how we operate, how God's designed us, that's such a benefit to us and to how we live.
Yes, it's just like, I mean, I love that you got that today, that was like God's little gift for you today, that you get
Yeah.
to see and experience that. And you're right. It's like shining a flashlight in the darkness. We get a little light over something that felt maybe confusing or hard. And then we have that light, we can become aware and we can start to see and experience it differently. Because nobody needs another motivational quote. Like, I don't need a tattoo on my wrist or anything. I just need to understand why my brain's doing what it's doing. And once we start to understand that overall design, that wholeness that you talked about, that's when we stop feeling unworthy or less than, and we start becoming curious and we start growing into who we're being called to become.
I love that. Well, explain to us, and I talked to you a little bit about this before we hit record because it's so curious to me. Neuroscience just feels super heady, pun intended. It's
Yeah.
super heady. It's super nerdy. It's, maybe it feels a little lofty to a lot of us. How, like, tell us a little bit about your background. You said you got certified. So what does that mean and how does that work out?
So for that process, it's actually started probably about 10 years ago when I was back in the classroom. I used to teach kindergarten, love me some kindergartners. And I noticed one little girl, she really struggled that year to retain information. So we were going over the planetary order. And so, I had worksheets that I was supposed to give out. And so by the next day, when I did the testing and the assessments with the kiddos, most of them didn't remember it at all. And this girl she was lost. And I was like, this is heartbreaking because I know she can learn, but maybe my approach is what's not the best, not helping with her because she was so upset and anxious and worried that she wouldn't get it right. And you could just see it. Her shoulders were up and she was biting her nails as she did. And I was like, there's got to be a different way that I can teach. And I knew nothing about any of this at that time. But in that moment, I went home and I got crafty as teachers do. And I got a bunch of cardboard and I literally made a giant solar system. So huge sun, big old Jupiter, tiny Mercury, all the planets in order. So I went in the next day and I was like, guys, we're not going to do the lesson. We're going to actually become the solar system. So I put them in planetary order. They got their giant cardboard cutouts. Some of them had got to curl up the papers to be the asteroid belt. And then I would put the music on. I'd say, let's dance around the solar system. We're going to praise God for making our creation. And they would dance and move with the cardboard. And then when I would pause the music, they had to line up in order. And then I would go through and they'd have to name their planet and have to get it all in order before we could play again. And so they loved it. They loved it, Cara. We did it probably for, I kid you not, an hour. And my favorite part was by the end of it, every single child knew the planetary order. Like they had it down. But that little girl, her name was Allison, and she was such a sweetheart. By the end, she came up to me and she was like, Miss Ash, I know all the planets in order. And I was going, wow. Just her confidence and her excitement that she could see herself as a learner, something that she couldn't do before. Now she could do it because we changed the approach. And I was like, well, if this works for little people, could this work for big people? Because I thought, what were we doing when we were doing that activity? First of all, it was body first. We were moving our bodies. They were getting all that stress response out. They weren't sitting at a desk. They were moving. They were breathing. They were laughing. It was amazing. And then from there, I was able to introduce the pattern of learning. And it was amazing how when you were able to take that movement and then combine it with some really good questions that you could start to see things shift. You could see the learning grow. You could see the practice and the skill building start to come together until the end, they got to this point where they went from A to B and they were able to have that knowledge for themselves. It became ingrained in them. So that's what really got me excited about it.
Yeah.
And so when I started the podcast, I was like, well, I want to know more, not because I'm going to go use it to, hang out my shingle for coaching. It's not what I was looking for. It's just, I wanted to discover more about how our brain works so we could better use it to help our little kids and to help us as big kids so we could use that information to change how we become learners, how we see ourselves, our identity, and our worth, so we can actually step into our callings with confidence because it's not on us, it's on the creator who made us, and he's the one who's carrying us forward.
Oh, that's so fun. I mean, I think I would really thrive in your classroom too. Like
You'd have
when
so much
learning
fun, Kara, and by the end, you'd be a master of planetary order. We'd be
I
so proud of
I
you.
would finally learn that little acronym, I can't remember what it is.
My very energetic mother just served us napkins, yeah, or
Yeah,
whatever
so
variation people like to pull, yeah.
well, and it's so fun that, like, when learning is fun and probably, like, to translate that into, like, the writer life, when what we're doing is fun and maybe we get a little bit out of our heads and we stop overthinking things. Tell us a little bit, like, how do we make that bridge from, like, five-year-old kindergarten kid, like, learning, like, embracing what was once really hard? How does that translate for writers who sometimes just, we're notoriously, introverted or we're very inner focused. We're always examining, we're always questioning ourselves. How does that play itself out for the writer?
Oh, I think you're so right because as writers or any sort of creative who's building or creating something, I think most of us, I would almost say all of us, but I don't want to include everybody, but I think most of us we struggle with that insecurity, that visibility, that fear, that feeling like I'm not good enough. Just like little Allison, all those years ago, she was like, well, I'm maybe I'm not smart, maybe I'm not a good learner, maybe I can't do this. And whether I'm talking to Allison or I'm talking to a 43-year-old woman like myself, it's like I don't think most writers have a confidence problem. Too often we think, oh, if I were just more confident,
Yeah.
then I'd know for certain this is what I was designed to do. If I could just get out of my head and get out of my thoughts. But I think something more hopeful is happening. So I think we have these beautiful little brains that are doing exactly what God designed them to do. So our brains, they love familiarity. They love patterns. And by golly, they just really like certainty. So if you're writing a book or you're sharing your words or you're dreaming about the possibilities of what it could be or just even pressing publish, none of those things are familiar at first. They're very vulnerable. Those are so hard. They're uncertain. They're visible. We're putting ourselves out there. And we've never done that thing before. We've never been that person before. So our brains naturally start asking, oh, is this safe? Is this safe? And I hear a lot of people call it imposter syndrome, but I really think there's something even deeper happening. Your brain is not trying to sabotage your calling. It's trying to protect you from uncertainty. So one of my favorite ways to explain this, and I like to use this analogy, is with tying your shoes. So imagine I looked at you and I was like, Cara, really what I want you to do right now is just close your eyes, reach down with your left hand, and tie your shoe with your mouth and your left hand. And you're going to think, yeah, you're crazy. So first of all, if you
I
can
don't
bend
bend
that
like that.
far, very impressive. You're learning. I'm not getting down there. But here's the cool thing. After what would probably be the world's most awkward wrestling match, and I would like to video it if you do try this, your brain would eventually get them tied. Why? Because your brain just shifted into what we call system 2. So we have system 1 in our brains, which is things automatic. We don't have to think about it. We have system 2, which is where learning and growth happens, and it's slow. And it's where your brain says, we've never done this before. And the problem is our brains were never designed to stay in system 2 all day because system 2 takes an incredible amount of mental energy. It drains our attention, it drains our focus, and it drains our emotional reserves. And that's why everything feels really hard in system 2 because it's harder there. It actually is. But here's the hopeful part. If I asked you to tie your shoe in that truly ridiculous way every day, every single day, eventually, through repetition and practice, your brain would build a new pathway. And one day you would wake up, Cara, and you would take your left hand and you'd get your teeth in there and you'd bend down with your eyes closed and you would tie your shoe without ever even thinking about it. And that's because what was once really hard and difficult has now become familiar. And at that point, you've just shifted back into your system 1, where things become automatic. You don't have to think nearly as hard because your brain has built that new pathway. And writing works the exact same way. So every time a writer writes another page, or they share another post, or they press publish, or whatever it is they're trying to do, they're not just creating, they're teaching their brain a new pattern. They're showing their brain, hey, oh, we've done this before. We survived. Maybe we're becoming someone who can do this. And growth
Mhm.
doesn't happen because fear just magically disappears. Growth happens because familiarity increases. And as writers, we absolutely do not want to eliminate system two, because that's where we become better writers. We grow our skill set, which we absolutely need to grow and keep growing. We grow our mindset. And that's where confidence is built. So that's where learning and growth actually happen together. So what we want to do is spend less time creating from our fear brain and more time creating from our love brain. And you've probably heard fear brain. I've heard fear brain all the time. It says protect yourself, hide, don't let anyone see it until it's just perfect. But when we can go from our love brain and start writing, love brain says things like, oh, you're already loved. You're already enough. Now go be faithful in what you've been given today. And that's just a very different place to create from. So the next time a writer out there has that voice that whispers, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are to write this book? Remember, it's not necessarily evidence we're doing the wrong thing or on the wrong path. It can simply be evidence that we're just taking a new path that we've never walked before. And that's hard. It really is.
That's so interesting. So you talked about the system 1 and system 2 and then the love brain and the fear brain. So is it just a matter of, for those who, I mean, we all feel that. I know that I do too. Absolutely. So is the solution just do it? Is that the solution? Because even that, it feels not helpful sometimes to people who are just really scared to move forward
Yes.
because it is new and it is unfamiliar, but we do have to move into it sometimes being uncomfortable. So, what would you say about that?
I would say name that fear. The number one thing you can do if you're in that moment. So, what actually, they've done this, the research and the science, when we name the fear, it actually reduces our amygdala response, our fear response. And we go, oh, I just named that thing. So, if we say system one is where familiar things live, like driving, brushing your teeth, tying your shoes, system two is where learning happens. And if I go, oh, I really don't want to sit down and write this page today because I don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't know if I have the skill set for it. I'm just nervous about all of it. We can name it and say, you know what? Oh, I'm nervous. I'm in fear brain because this is system two. This is hard. Of course, it's going to be hard. I can expect that. But then I can move forward and do hard things because God is with me. So I think the first step to that would be naming the fear, because that's going to calm down our fear response and that's going to help us move forward. And I don't think God's ever like, grit your teeth and go forward. It's funny that you mentioned your devotions today. Mine were in Joshua today. So I was Joshua 1-3. And it's over and over. It says, be strong and courageous. But I don't think God's saying, hey, Joshua, I want you to toughen up and I want you to just make it across the Jordan River, because he ends that verse by saying, be strong and courageous because the Lord your God, I am with you. So
Mhm.
it's saying, well, I'm going to go through that with you. So we all have our Jordan River, whatever it is in our writing life or our personal lives. We have that thing that kind of keeps us stuck from going to the next step. And God's not saying, hey, I want you to toughen up and power through and grit your teeth and just do it. He's saying, be strong and courageous because I'm with you and I'm going to do it with you. So we name that fear, and then we're able to say, okay, I can trust God to take that next step.
I love that. Kathy asked a really good question here. I'm going to put it on the screen. Sometimes the fear I'm naming isn't really the fear I'm dealing with. How do you distill that down to the real fear? And I was thinking the same thing, because sometimes just figuring out what it is, that takes a little bit of work too, because you just have kind of a vague sense of this is scary, this is uncomfortable. I find, like, I think maybe too, this is where the faith element kind of comes in, because we can pray, right? We can talk to the Lord about it. We can work through a lot of this, not alone, but with him. But what would you say?
Well, she said sometimes naming the fear I'm naming isn't really the fear, I'm dealing with it. And you know what? That's a great point, because so often our fear is more deeper rooted. So something that comes up as a symptom, kind of like when you have a headache and you go to the doctor and you hope they don't just throw you some medication. You hope that they actually boil it down and say, well, let's talk about your eating habits. Let's talk about your sleeping habits. Let's talk about some other things you're going through. You want to get to the root cause of it. But I think the biggest thing with naming the right fear is I think sometimes we're trying to do it in our heads. We're trying to do it cerebrally when the reality is that's not how our bodies work. So if I were going to try and explain or answer that, I hope this answers your question. I would say that when we can't actually rationally name the fear that we're experiencing, it's because we're in survival mode at that point. So we're not in a place where we can start to think and actually name the fear appropriately. And we have to be honest with ourselves because survival mode is sneaky, and most of us don't realize that we're in it. We think that, oh, I just can't correctly label that fear. I don't know what that is, or I'm procrastinating, and or I'm lazy, or I've lost my creativity, or I've never been creative to begin with. But we're simply overwhelmed. We are in a stress response. So that a lot of times keeps us from being able to label the fear that we're in. So for a writer or creative, that might look like opening up your laptop and staring at a blinking cursor. I've had that one. And suddenly having absolutely no idea where to begin. Or maybe you're like, okay, I know I'm overwhelmed or I'm nervous, but I don't know why. I can't name that fear, Ash. I can't push that stress response down because I don't know what it is. And so, or maybe you're asking for feedback and you get one critical comment and suddenly you forget all the 20 encouraging ones that you had.
Mhm.
And so that's what survival mode feels like. It's not just our thoughts. So if you're listening and you're going, well, I can't name that fear, that's very normal because that's kind of an indication that you're in survival mode, which is very sneaky. And survival mode doesn't start in our thoughts, it's in our bodies too. So maybe it's like your shoulders start to slowly creep up towards your ears, or maybe your jaw clenches, or maybe you start shaking your wrist, or maybe your chest starts feeling tight, or your stomach is just somersaulting all over the place. But what's happening there is your brain got noisy, your thoughts got cluttered, and everything feels urgent and hard. And you're like, I can't even identify what that fear is. I couldn't even label what the real thing is there. And it's very easy to slip into the going, oh, I think something's wrong with me. But the reality is, it's your nervous system that's simply trying to protect you because what you're doing feels vulnerable. So when that happens, if you're saying, oh, I can't name that fear, that's when I would actually invite you into doing a love move or whatever practice it would be for you that can actually help you get out of your fear brain and into your love brain so you can better identify it and you can move forward. But that's always going to start with body first because our bodies do not understand regular communication. You can't just look down at your body and be like, oh, friend, come on, pull it together, settle down. What are you so afraid of? Because our bodies don't understand words. They understand breath and movement and rhythm. So when we speak to our bodies first through those modalities, then we're better able to get back into our love brain where we can actually think a little bit deeper, a little bit more clear, and understand what's going on there.
Well, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what is a love move? What does that mean? And I know you write about that. You have all kinds of things to say.
Yes.
So introduce us to love moves.
I love love moves. Okay, so I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that when we're overwhelmed, that we can just simply think our way out of it. Especially ambitious women who are like, they're called to writing or a creative life. You think, oh, I can just think my way out of it. I'm just going to think I can problem solve this. I can please this person. I can do this. And if you've ever tried it, which I like to do it on the regular, it doesn't work very well because when we're stressed, we're anxious, or we're discouraged or overwhelmed, our thoughts get more cluttered and they get louder and louder. And it's like they start grabbing the microphone and we're like, no, calm down. Don't think that. Just stop worrying. But like we said, our bodies don't speak that language. So we said they understand breath, they understand movement, and they understand rhythm. So if we really want to move from overwhelm or insecurity or fear brain or survival mode and just get back into peace, we have to start with our body. So that's where our love move came from. So the book, the 6 minute inside out makeover, they were both born out of just this one question. What is the simplest, quickest way to help someone move from their fear brain back to their love brain? Like that's it. So a love move is a 6 minute practice that starts on the inside. We begin by helping the body settle through intentional movement and breathing. And then we move on to remembrance. We remember who God is, who he says we are, and what's actually true. Not just what feels real, but what's actually true. And then we practice that, not perfectly, but repeatedly. So one of my favorite parts of a love move is something I call the spotlight question. And they're designed to bring to the surface what's already there. So if you're willing to try a little experiment with me, can I ask you a question, Cara?
Sure.
Okay. Cara, what were you wearing yesterday?
Jean shorts and a t-shirt.
Sounds fabulous. Now, I'm going to guess that you probably weren't thinking 30 seconds ago about what you were wearing yesterday, were you?
No, I had to
No.
think hard about it,
No.
actually.
Yeah, to really get in there, but you were
Yeah.
able to bring it up. Your brain went looking for the answer. The information was already there. The question simply brought it up into your conscious and into the light. And that's exactly what a spotlight question does. They are carefully designed to help bring God's truth back to the surface for us. Not because it's not there, but because we forgot in our stress response where to look. So over time, those 6 minutes, they become more than a practice. They become this pattern. Maybe it's how someone begins their morning. That's me. Maybe it's how someone prepares to write. I actually have a special one I do before I write every time. Maybe it's what you reach for after a difficult review or before you press publish on something. But little by little, through a love move, you're teaching your brain and body a new way to experience that moment. So what it is, it's just a 6-minute guided love move. You can do it with me. I have multiple ones for all different situations in life, or there's just the simple OG one that you can just do on your own. But it's just pressing play. And for 6 minutes, we start by moving our body. We say a prayer, and then we start bringing spotlight questions with special movements that are going to help our body energetically kind of shift up or down. And so we can experience that moment differently.
Okay. I love that. I think that's really important. And it's interesting too because I did have to like really stop and think about it. I think that that is true too, to move our minds out of like the rhythm that we're in often kind of takes something disruptive, doesn't it? To kind of make
Yes.
us remember something that we know something that's true about God, but it's not always top of mind. It's not always just right there. So you're probably just using that different part of the brain, right?
Yes. And I love that you use the word disrupt because that's literally what we have to do. We have to disrupt the pattern because our poor little brains trying to keep us safe, they're around 70% negative. So if we're not intentional and aware, they just drift towards the negative. But when we have those questions, we can disrupt that drift and we can be more intentional about remembering and bringing that information back to mind. And as we read through the Old Testament, it's like, what does God command his people to do over and over and over again? It's remember, remember,
Right.
remember. And why does he ask that? Not because God forgets, but because he knows that we as humans, we forget. And so we need practices. So he had all sorts of, ceremonies and rituals and celebrations that he built into their daily life to help them remember to stop the drift sooner.
So true. I love that. Well, what would you say to, writers in particular who are, what do you wish that they understood more about, the connection that you're making with our brain, our hearts, our minds, our bodies, and how that translates to the page, to the work?
To the work. I think honestly what I wish they would realize is that with their brains, is that the more we start to understand how God created our brains, the more it helps us realize we're normal. We're normal. Our brains are doing what they are supposed to do. And sometimes normalizing that feels really, really good. Because when we don't understand our brains, we start to assume that every difficult thought that comes up means something's wrong with us. We start thinking stories like, maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Maybe God called the wrong person. Maybe I'm just broken. Maybe I'm not really a writer. And our brains are constantly creating these stories to make sense of the world around us. And when we don't understand what's happening, we start believing those thoughts that come into our head. But the reality is, our beautiful, predictable brains are often doing exactly what God designed them to do. They're trying to protect us. And I think that's so freeing to say. I think it's so freeing for us to start to understand as writers because it's so hopeful. Because instead of believing every thought that just pops in our head, and by golly, don't we have some fun ones, we start to become curious instead. We're like, oh, I'm going to name it. My brain is overwhelmed right now. Or, oh, this is new. Or, oh, I'm in system 2 because I'm learning. Or, oh, my brain's just looking for certainty right now. And that's kind of that naming piece. And that little shift can change everything. And one of my favorite sayings is awareness creates choice. If I don't know what's happening, I'm simply reacting, and I'm reacting how I always normally react. But once I become aware, I get a choice. I can stay in my fear brain, or I can gently start to work to move back to my love brain. And that's where I think faith comes in so powerfully. I love it because scripture doesn't tell us to believe every single thing we think. It tells us to renew our mind, to take our thoughts captive, and to think about what is true. And so I think neuroscience simply just helps explain how God designed us to do that. So for me, neuroscience has never made God smaller. It's made him infinitely bigger because I look at the brain and I think, of course you thought of that. You didn't leave us stuck in our own heads. You had a way out for us. And that just reminds me, he didn't just save our souls. He designed our minds. He gave us neuroplasticity. He knew that they could change. That's why I really do love creating really pretty, I like pretty things, practical tools that people can use and practice in everyday life. Because you know as well as I do, like just knowing the information, having that head knowledge rarely changes us. So we do have to have that awareness, but that's why we have to have remembrance and practice, because that's what creates lasting change. So if we want these writers to bring these stories to the world, we want them to have tools to help them do that. And it kind of brings me back to Joshua from today, because I look at Rahab, and one of the key lines that stuck out to me was she said, I heard the stories. And here's this woman who was not part of Israel. She was not part of the covenant. She did not know Yahweh, but she heard the stories. She heard people's personal testimonies, people who were called to remember and share. And I think that's writers. Like we are called, and not that every story has to be explicitly faith-based, but it is God honoring in what we write. And those stories can help other people. So I think it's so powerful and so important to help writers get excited to become and understand their brains in the process, because we need their stories. We need them to write that, because their stories can change lives, but we just need to give them that little confidence boost so they can take those tools and move forward and put those stories in the world.
Oh, I love that. I couldn't agree more. I was thinking this morning, I was on the treadmill, so I was actually physically moving my body, but I was thinking about something in the future that I have to do, and I felt my temperature rise even more. I
Mhm.
literally felt my heart palpitate. I was literally getting so nervous. I think I was in that survival brain that you were talking about. And I don't have like never had a panic attack, I don't feel like, but I was starting to just get so anxious in my own heart about this thing that I'm going to be doing soon. And anyway, what would you say, like I'm just kind of like I'm putting this all together as you're talking, because how would you say to deal with stuff like that when it comes up and you feel that fight or flight kind of feel
Yeah.
that kind of pops in? I mean, I know the biblical answer, and maybe now I know a little bit more about the the neuroscience answer, but maybe you could kind of bring that in together, because it wasn't the first time. It happens, it's happened a few times. So I'm wanting to get better at like dealing with this anxiousness, this anxiety that I'm feeling. But I'm just thinking I was moving, but
Yes.
like I guess I wasn't engaging my heart, my mind in the way that you've been describing, remembering the remembering part.
Well, first of all, kudos for getting moving in the morning. Like anytime someone can hit the treadmill, like let's just celebrate that. Nicely done,
Okay,
Karen.
thanks.
That's amazing. But for you on that very specific question, what I personally think might help you, and I will send it to you so you have access to it. But for me, I do sometimes struggle with the world getting very noisy and getting very loud, and I can start to operate from a place of panic. And so I would say for you, starting a new habit, very small, very simple, but I would send you my Walking with Jesus Love Move. And that's the one I do every morning. And I go outside within 60 minutes of waking. I get the sunshine because that does all sorts of fun stuff for our brains. And I do the Walk with Jesus Love Move. And that's literally exactly what you just said. Instead of starting the day on pressure, and it's starting the day with fear, of panic, of worry, of all the things that we have to get done, it literally names that for you. And it says, what's the first thing that you thought about today? And it gives you some ideas. And then it says, okay, don't judge it, don't shame it, but let's bring it back to where we are here in this moment. So we start to ground it with some looking at some visual cues and breathing. And then from there, it starts talking about, okay, how do I want to show up today? Giving some ideas. Maybe, do I want people to feel seen? Do I want them to feel loved? Do I want them to feel welcome? Do I want them to feel calm? And then from there, I guide you saying, that's amazing, but you can't give what you don't have. So we're going to have you receive that first, because you cannot give calm if you're not experiencing calm yourself. So we start working with your body and your brain to experience that calm so you can carry it into the rest of your day. And the whole thought behind it is, so often when we start our day, we start already in survival mode. We start with the to-do list, all the things we have to do, the overwhelm, and then this pressure and this performance starts pushing down on us. And we're like, oh, we're already starting the day scattered and overwhelmed. And this is a different way to start our day, walking with Jesus, remembering that it's not all on us. And fear brain likes to tell us that everything is urgent and it has to happen in that moment. And we start struggling to say, how do I even prioritize something? I don't even know where to start, Lord. But the reality is we start back with him. So we get our bodies walking, we walk with Jesus, we give it to him to carry, and then he gives us our portion for that day. So I would say for you in that specific instance, I would try the walking with Jesus because it takes the panic out before it starts to begin and being what we build from that day.
Yeah, I love that too. I think too, don't you think it's so harder now than it was 10, 15 years ago because we are just like what you were describing about feeling like everything is super like time sensitive and I have to rush, I have to hurry. Add on top of that that things are just coming at us like left and right and we don't even have time. Our brains aren't even really created to process all of the things that we're being inundated with. So I mean, walking with Jesus, yes, sign me up for that because that's what I need to do to, focus my heart and my mind on him first thing. Otherwise, it just gets we lose it throughout the day because we've got so much coming at us through media and social media,
I know those
just
little glowing
inundation.
boxes, they are not helping any of us in the morning.
Right, right. Yeah.
Those are a challenge.
For sure. Well, I want to take a moment now, and if you are here with us, I will add you to the stage. And if your camera's on, and feel free if you'd like to. Got a lot of people here today, so if you want to, unmute, ask questions, follow up, any clarifications that Ashriel might be able to give, that'd be great. So good to see you guys here today. Oh, you're muted, Ashriel.
How about now?
Gotcha.
Whew, okay. Again, guys, don't be shy. Like I said, I work with kindergartners, so I get the most bizarre questions. So if you can out top them, like I welcome it. Like if you can out bizarre a kindergartner, we have just won today, and I like that for us.
That's awesome.
So you were just saying that first thing in the morning body movement is the kind of the best case or best scenario. What about for somebody who's more of a night owl person? Is there a different rhythm to that day?
Oh, I love that question because you sound like my mom. She's like, I am all things sleep in, and you will find me doing my best creative work at midnight. And I'm like, Mom, I love that for you so much. And absolutely. So I would actually do it both ways. So I'm kind of that girl that I think for years I was like, what's the right morning routine? Do I high five my ear? Do I have to make my bed? I don't want to make my bed. And so I was trying to find that right morning routine. And eventually it came down to I don't have all the time in the world. I just want to give my first fruit and my attention to Jesus. So whether that's waking up at 6 in the morning, 10 in the morning, whatever that is, doing that reset, just having that time with Jesus, I think is really important. But I think if you're going to be at night doing your work, my biggest favorite thing with that is finding the movement and the time that works for you. So I actually do a very specific one before I sit down to write because, as a writer, it gets a little anxious, right? You start to tense up. We're like, okay, it's time to write. How's it going to go this time? So for me, I don't want to start it from that place of panic or urgency. So I have a very specific one that I like to do. It's different for everyone, but mine, it's called the latte of love. I got a real caffeine theme there for a while. Don't mind me. But that's the one I do because I'm like, I want to start to create from love. I don't want it to come from fear or urgency. I want to enjoy this process. Like, I know it's not going to look perfect. I know that this may not be the best selling words that I come up with today, but I really want to enjoy learning and becoming in that writing time. And that's so important to me. So whenever it is that you're looking for saying, hey, I just want to be able to experience this differently, I think it's really important and very special to say, oh, okay, I can notice that now. That's my awareness. I want to get ready at 11:45 at night to start gearing up to write my novel. I want to start it in a way that's going to actually fill me up so I enjoy this. So instead of starting from pressure or performance, you're starting off your writing. Maybe you do the latte of love with me. It's going to be amazing. There we are at 11:45 at night, just talking about caffeine. I like this for us. But then you get to go into your writing time and you get to create in the time that God made you to experience it better, because my mom's the same way. Her best stuff comes at like after 1 a.m. I'm like, I don't know how you do it. I got all your emails, but thank you.
That's amazing. So do you start every like creative block of time with some sort of movement pattern before you get started?
Oh, I absolutely do. Whether I'm recording a podcast or writing a podcast, or I'm working on my books, I always start with movement. I always start with one of my reset videos, or if it's going to be podcasting, I actually usually start with a worship song where I shake it out. And then I just do some vocal intonations. But yes, I always want to start it off the right way. So I think there's so much about preparation and about being intentional, because my poor little brain, it likes to drift. It likes to create really impressive stories. Most of them are not true. So I want to come back to what's actually true. I've did a lot of podcasts on that one too, guys. That's me. But for me, yeah, it's very important before I start any sort of creative endeavor that I'm coming from the right posture. So the right foundation, because if I leave it up to me and I just, grab the mic and I start talking on a podcast, it will not go well because I'm already feeling a lot of pressure to perform, to do it the right way, to control the outcome. It has to be just right. It has to be perfect. But when I can take away my stress response and I can actually shift my brain state into my love brain, then I can start and be like, oh, I get to do this. I'm made to do this and I'm not doing it alone. And this feels way better. And then I am less critical on myself about what I actually create because it's not coming from this. It has to look a certain way to be worthy.
Do you feel that, I mean, this is different from like any sort of yoga or kind of the Eastern meditative kind of mindset, because often I hear a lot of yogis talk about that kind of thing. How would you say what you're talking about is different?
I think it's very different with yoga, with, positive affirmations. We got a lot of those running around in the world today. I think it's different because when we talk about spotlight questions, they're inviting discovery. They're helping us uncover what's actually already there instead of trying to force ourselves to believe something. So, if I'm like, if I haven't brushed my teeth in 3 days and the shower hasn't seen me in a month and I look at myself in the mirror, I'm like, you are breathtaking. I'm going to be like, you're such a liar. I'm not going to believe that for a minute. So I'm not going to force myself to believe something. But when we do spotlight questions that are grounded in God's truth, they are so powerful because they direct your attention. So your brain naturally starts searching for whatever question you ask it. So instead of asking your brain, what is wrong with me, brain? We begin asking questions that guide our attention back towards the truth.
I love that. And Eastern versus Christian meditation is the emptying of the mind versus the filling of the mind. Like we are to think on these things. And what you're describing is definitely a filling of the mind versus like a completely checking out kind of mindset mentality.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I guess the hard part I have with that, it's kind of like, let's take it back to the phone analogy. So if I'm saying that I want to fill up and be recharged and just feel better so I can go do all the things I need to do today, and I set my phone down right there and I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to just binge watch some Netflix. By the end of that session, I have not been recharged. I have not been renewed. I have emptied some things out, but I'm not starting filled. Versus if I take my phone and I plug it in, I'm actually recharging. And so I think that's the difference between like emptying out and filling. And when we recharge, we actually get back to rest. We get back to wholeness because I can get to the end of 2 a.m. and I'm going to call my friend out here who's still up and I'll be like, I still don't feel good. I still don't feel rested. I don't feel recharged. And I think that's the difference between maybe an Eastern meditation or a Western meditation. And it's challenging to use that word for some people. So I want to be careful with that. But it's exactly what you said. One thing is just trying to release things, but you're not actually resting versus filling up. So you're recharging and you're connected to the source that actually recharges you, which is going to be the truth of God.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Kathy asked another great question. How does journaling fit in?
Journaling's amazing. Journaling is absolutely amazing for so many different things. One, we can go to the neuroscience of actually writing things down and how great that is for your brain. That's a whole podcast too. But beyond that, journaling, it does so many things because it's helping you remember. It's releasing your creative flow, and it actually can take you into that flow state of where you have better ideas, you get really creative. So I love journaling. I love puzzling. I love doodling. Like all of those things are things that can help you start to get your brain a little bit more creative and get more ideas flowing. So I think journaling is one of the best things you can do. Yes, let's go buy journals, guys. That's what I'm saying. 100%.
Seems like this could also help with body image, feeling good about the body you're in. That is a gift from God.
Oh,
how would you
love that?
Would
Can
you
we
add,
just
would
normalize
you add to that?
again? Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We all want to feel confident, right? We want to feel like we have it, that we matter, we have value, and yet our bodies become. And I go, oh gosh, at 43, not real happy with what's happening around here. But what we can use this to shift the conversation. And I actually have probably one of my favorite love moves. It's called Wonderfully Made to Live Beautifully. And it's about experiencing our body and becoming differently and experiencing our beauty. Because I don't think beauty is the enemy. I think there's a war on beauty, but I think we're thinking about beauty in the wrong way and our worth in the wrong way. So this entire love move, it takes you through understanding that we are fearfully and we are wonderfully made. And we are not a problem to be solved, but we have to start with identity. Because if we start to get our confidence confidence in, okay, my hair is cut just the right way, or my teeth are just this perfect shade of white, or, I just wore the right shirt today, so now I am worthy. If our confidence is in that, it is so fragile. One criticism, the moment we start to get, 1,200 wrinkles right here, we say, okay, now something's wrong with me. Now I'm not beautiful, because our confidence is coming from something that's an outside source versus our inner identity. And so I think that's an amazing question. And yes, that's probably my favorite way to help women, is more than anything, is to understand their great worth and their great beauty so they can experience it. Because this isn't hard for me, but my best friend's mama, she recently just passed away. And that one was heartbreaking for me, because up until the very end, she was unhappy with her body. She was unhappy with how she looked. She was constantly on a diet. She was always weighing and measuring herself, and she was finding herself lacking. And so what I tell women is, I love the inside out makeovers, because I will do absolutely nothing to change your circumstances. I will do nothing to go put some makeup on, or, a hairstyle on you. But what I will do is help you transform from the inside. And one of my favorite ways to think about this, and that I talk about this a lot on the podcast, is you look about when the Israelites were going through the wilderness, and they were complaining, they were grumbling. It was hard. Things were not going well. Their circumstances were challenging. And yet, in the middle of it, God called them to build the tabernacle. He said, in the middle of the hard, not when you get to the promised land, not when everything looks just the way you think it should be, but in the middle of the wilderness, build something beautiful. And then where did he start? He started in the Holy of Holies, at the very inside, because God knew that transformation starts with our identity, and it starts from the inside out. So all of that to say, yes, I absolutely have love moves that talk about identity and confidence, and feeling beautiful and worthy in our own bodies, not because we need changing, not because we need fixing, because we need to start to see ourselves differently. And when we can see ourselves differently, we start to think about ourselves differently. When we start to think about ourselves differently, we start to behave differently. And that's when women's shoulders kind of go back and they walk a little taller, not because they got a good haircut, but because they know the source of their worth.
So good.
You guys want to build a tabernacle?
Not particularly.
It seems like there was a lot of measurements. There was a lot of fabric, a lot of gold. There was a lot going on. So that
very precise directions for sure. Ashriel, here's your website, but where else can people get in touch with you, learn more about your love moves? And what format do those, you talk about getting them. So I'm just wondering, is this like an audio file, or is this a digital download? What kind of file format is that?
That is a great question. So I have a few that are always free on the website. So I'd love for you to go explore them. Those are a lot of fun. I also have them part of like my membership, which is, it's called the brand. But again, I was very caffeinated when I made it. So it's in the middle of a rebrand. But really what I explain is it's like a portable love moves gym for your nervous system. So anywhere you go, it's like this little app on my phone. I click on it, and then it has all the videos right there. You get to see my mug right there working out right with you, and then guiding you through the questions. And then we do a little breathing at the end, and a little encouragement, because we're proud of ourselves for pressing play. Like, that's amazing. So yes, if you're interested in like, hey, I want to love move. Like, I want to do walking with Jesus. You can go on. I have it on the podcast. I have it on the website, and you can get that one for free and just press play every morning, and we can hang out and walk with Jesus together. That's a fun one. I have the SMRM, which is kind of, you can do anywhere, anytime. You don't even have to press play, but that's also on there. And then for women that are like, I want more. I want to create that practice, that habit, that ritual. I invite them into the Brim, and they get lots of fun stuff from me each month, and some special things that I send out to them, but then they get access to all the videos at any time to press play on.
Oh, I love that. Her web address is calledandcurious.com for those who listen to this on audio later. So, and then tell us too, because Ashriel is going to be doing a subsequent teaching for us in the Writers Bloc. Yay!
It's gonna be so much fun, guys. Like, so much fun. I'm so excited about this.
Yes,
it won't
we're
be
so
perfect. It'll be
excited.
messy, but fun.
I mean, if you're going to put us in planetary order, I'm all for that. But
I've already decided who's who, and I'm not going to tell you which, but I see a Mercury out there. I definitely see a Venus. And you know what? I see a Neptune. We're going to have fun with it, guys. It's good.
What are you going to be teaching us on Thursday inside the Writers Bloc?
So we're going to sit down, because I believe like each writer, you have been called, like you have that story that needs to get out into the world, but we also have our unique stories that are in our own heads that are kind of blocking us sometimes from truly getting that story out there or feeling confident and not anxious when we put it out there. So we start with building our creative writer's mission statement. And so it's kind of like a Mad Libs, but for writers. It's really fun. And we'll do it together. We'll share it. We'll talk about it. And then from there, I actually have a special create reset. This one's not a video form. I could make a video one day. We can chat about that. But it's the creative writers just kind of reset video experience, if you will, without the video. And so it takes you through the whole body and brain experience. So even if you're doing it at like 11:45 at night, you can go through this create thing and you're like, okay, here we go. I got this. And that might be a great way to start your writing session. Or like, let's say, the quote unquote writer's block that we get, instead of sitting there and just, yelling at our computer, you get up, you go back to your creative mission statement. You remember why you're doing this and how you're doing this and how you're showing up. And then you do that quick little brain body reset and then you go back to the computer.
I think we need you for sure. We're really excited to.
You just want to knock out the assessments for planetary order. I already know what you're thinking over there.
Yeah, I think I do. I think I just want to be in your kindergarten class because I think you'd be an awesome teacher.
Well, those days are gone. So now I get to teach you guys and we get to have a whole lot of fun doing it too. So it'll be just as great. Maybe I'll come up with something a little silly for us to enjoy for that one too.
Yeah, we're down. We're down for that. Are there any other questions for Ashriel before we finish up today? Well, I'm watching movement. All right.
And guys, if there's ever a thing you're like, where is this thing that Ash talked about? Just message me. Like I called in curious. Like just send me a DM. You can on Instagram or just on the website. And I would just love to chat with you. Like it's so nice to see your faces. I love the faces.
It's
so
so
if you're
fun.
like, hey, I want to chat more, like, yeah, just shoot me a DM or just send me an email. And I would love to have like a further conversation or just say hi or just say, I'm glad it's midnight and that you're reaching out. I probably won't respond until morning, but here we are. That'll be great.
Yes, exactly. Well, this has been really fun, educational, and really uplifting. So thank you so much for being with us. And thank you all for joining us today on the call.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you everyone on Thursday.
Love that. Bye, guys.
Are you ready to grow in the art and heart of writing? Visit us at mywritersblock.com to learn more about our memberships. We can't wait to see you around the block.